The night felt too clean. Streetlights floated in a thin fog, and our ambulance rolled through it like a slow, white animal breathing. The heater clicked. My partner's coffee smelled burnt. I kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the radio mic, listening to soft dispatch chatter wash over us. Blood pressure cuffs rattled in their bin every time we hit a seam in the road. It was quiet enough to hear my own breath inside the mask hanging at my neck. We'd had 3 routine calls already. A slip and fall, a panic attack, a kid with a fever. Nothing that sticks. I told myself to enjoy the quiet, but it felt like a pause held too long. The city looked hollow, as if the buildings were all shells and we were the only ones moving inside them. Static fluttered in the speaker for a second, then cleared. No alarm, no urgency. Still, something pressed behind my ribs, light as a fingertip. I didn't know it yet, but the next call would live in me for years. We rolled back toward the Central District, the roads damp and empty, the city pulsing faintly under streetlights. It was the kind of hour when time stops feeling real. Too late for traffic, too early for dawn. The hum of the engine was steady, almost comforting. Kelly leaned her head against the window, tapping a pen against her knee while I scrolled through the next assignment sheet on the console. Nothing unusual, just small emergencies scattered like routine dots on a long night. The cab smelled like coffee and disinfectant, the usual mix that clings to your clothes even after you go home. We passed a bakery truck unloading dough, a stray dog crossing against the light, and a man smoking under a bus stop sign. Ordinary details, ordinary comfort. That's the rhythm of this job. Calm, until it's not. The radio crackled every few minutes, voices calling out station codes and locations. Each line of static meant someone out there needed help. You learn to hear the difference, the tone between panic and procedure. We stopped at a diner for a quick refill. Kelly joked about quitting and opening a food truck somewhere warm. I laughed, but deep down I knew we'd both be back in the same seats tomorrow night. I didn't notice it then, but the quiet between dispatch calls was getting longer than usual. Too long, as if something was holding its breath before speaking. It came through just after 2:17 a.m. The radio snapped from silence into a burst of static so sharp it made both of us flinch. Then a voice came through, faint, shaky, almost swallowed by the noise. Unit 12, unresponsive female, County Road 9. The rest broke apart like it was underwater. Kelly leaned forward, frowning. County Road 9, that place is closed. She turned the volume up, but the voice faded. Only static filled the cab again. I double-checked our call log. No entry, nothing pending. Then the radio buzzed once more, the same voice repeating the same thing, word for word, like a recording. It didn't sound like our usual dispatcher. It sounded younger, unsure, but still calm enough to feel real. Kelly glanced at me, uneasy. Could be an old system echo, she said. They've had frequency ghosts before. I nodded, pretending to believe her, but something in my gut didn't. The call was logged seconds later, this time officially. Same address, same code, possible unresponsive female. Except the GPS map showed nothing there, just blank land, marked no access. I called dispatch to confirm. The line clicked twice and a woman's voice answered, clear, normal. Unit 12, proceed to County Road 9. I asked, who's assigning this? She hesitated. It's on your sheet already. Then she ended the transmission. Kelly wrote the address on her notepad, her pen trembling slightly. Guess we're going, she said, forcing a grin that didn't reach her eyes. As I pulled the ambulance back onto the road, I noticed my hands were cold against the wheel. Not shaking, just cold. The kind of cold that doesn't come from weather. The further we drove, the thinner the air felt. The street lights disappeared one by one until the only light came from our high beams cutting through the fog. The GPS lost signal about 5 miles out, blinking red before freezing completely. Beyond that point, it was just darkness and the sound of our tires on wet gravel. County Road 9 looked forgotten. Trees leaned close from both sides, their branches scraping the roof like nails. The road curved endlessly, leading us deeper into nothing. I kept waiting to see another car, another sign of life, but there was nothing. No sound except the steady thump of the wipers and the faint static from the radio that wouldn't fully die. We finally spotted a wooden gate up ahead, old, half-collapsed, with a private property sign barely hanging. The fence behind it was broken in 2 places, tall grass growing through. I killed the engine, and the silence that followed was heavy enough to feel. When we stepped out, the air hit like ice. The smell of damp earth mixed with rust drifted from somewhere nearby. Kelly shined her flashlight toward the field. "Hello?" Her voice disappeared into the fog. Then I heard it. A soft sound, not quite crying, not quite breathing. It came from somewhere past the gate. We followed it, boots sinking into the wet ground, the beam of light bouncing over patches of grass and mud. The sound grew clearer, definitely crying now, low and steady. I saw movement by the fence line, small and still at the same time. A shape crouched near the ground, pale against the darkness. Kelly whispered, "You see that?" I nodded, heart pounding once in my chest before everything went quiet again. Too quiet to be real. She was sitting in the wet grass, facing away from us, shoulders shaking slightly as if she were cold. The closer we got, the stranger it felt. Not fear exactly, just a heaviness pressing against the air. Kelly crouched first, speaking softly the way we're trained to with trauma patients. "Miss, can you hear me? Are you hurt?" The girl turned her head slowly. Her skin looked pale under the flashlight, almost translucent. Her hair was soaked, strands sticking to her cheeks. She couldn't have been older than 15. There were no wounds, no blood, not even dirt on her hands. Just that hollow look, eyes fixed on something that wasn't there. I slipped my jacket around her shoulders and checked her pulse. It was faint but steady. Her skin felt cold, colder than the air. When I asked her name, she hesitated before whispering, "Lila." Her voice cracked on the second syllable, like she wasn't sure if it belonged to her. Kelly started prepping the stretcher, but the girl didn't move. She kept glancing toward the field as if waiting for someone else to appear. When I tried to follow her gaze, all I saw was fog swallowing the horizon. "Were you with anyone?" I asked. She blinked slowly, lips barely moving. "They didn't make it." Her words were calm, too calm. We lifted her carefully onto the gurney. Her clothes were damp, but her feet were spotless, as if she hadn't walked through the mud at all. As I buckled the straps, she caught my wrist and whispered something I almost didn't catch. "Don't let them find me again." Kelly froze mid-step. I asked her what she meant, but she turned her head away, eyes closed. The monitor beeped once when I connected it to her arm, then steadied. The reading made no sense. Body temperature below normal range, heart rate strong. I didn't say anything. I just kept my hand on the wheel as we loaded her inside and shut the doors. The first mile was quiet, just the low growl of the engine and the faint hum of the heart monitor. The girl lay still, her breathing soft and even. Kelly watched the vitals, tapping her pen against the clipboard, her focus calm but distant. The fog outside pressed against the windows, glowing white under our headlights. Halfway down the road, the lights inside the ambulance dimmed for a second, then brightened again. The monitor let out a soft blip, skipping a beat before settling back to normal. I thought nothing of it until the air changed. Colder, heavier. like a draft from somewhere that shouldn't exist. Kelly frowned. "Do you feel that?" Before I could answer, the radio came alive with faint static. No voice, just the same short burst we'd heard earlier before the strange call. She reached to turn it down, but it hissed louder for a moment and then cut out completely. The silence that followed was thick enough to hear her breathing. I caught something in the rearview mirror. The girl's eyes were open now, staring straight ahead, unblinking. I called her name. She didn't move. Her reflection in the glass looked wrong somehow, her lips moving slightly, though no sound came out. Kelly leaned closer, her temperature's dropping again. She checked the screen. The number flickered as if unsure of itself. Then I smelled it, faint, metallic, like overheated wiring mixed with damp earth. The heater was still on, yet the cold crept into my gloves. When the next sound came, it was so soft I almost missed it. A whisper. Just my name. Kelly looked up, puzzled. "What?" I didn't answer. I couldn't, because the voice hadn't come from her. It had come from the patient. The whisper cut through the silence like a needle through cloth. I turned halfway in my seat, certain I'd imagined it, but her lips were still moving. Slow, deliberate, forming words I couldn't hear over the rumble of the tires. Kelly leaned closer, trying to catch them, but the moment she did, the monitor began to beep in sharp, uneven bursts. Her pulse doubled, then vanished, then came back stronger than before. Kelly called out vitals, her voice cracking as she reached for the oxygen mask. "She's seizing," she said, but the girl wasn't thrashing. She was staring straight up, eyes locked open, pupils huge. The lights overhead flickered again. Off, on, off. I hit the brakes and coasted onto the shoulder, but before we fully stopped, the sirens switched on by themselves. The wailing filled the cab, echoing inside my chest like a scream that didn't belong to us. Kelly yelled for me to kill the switch, but the panel was dead, every button unresponsive. Then came the worst part. Her voice again, clear this time, layered over the siren. "You didn't find them." Kelly froze. "Who didn't we find?" But she wasn't looking at us anymore. She sat up slowly, straps still fastened, body stiff, head tilted just enough to make every movement wrong. Her gaze found me through the mirror. "You're too late." For a second, the siren dropped into complete silence. Then all at once, every monitor, every light, every sound in the ambulance surged together in one deafening tone, a long flatline scream that filled the air. Kelly ripped her headset off, shouting something I couldn't make out. When the sound finally cut, we looked down. The gurney was empty. The blanket lay folded neatly, straps still buckled as if she'd never been there. And outside, through the fog, the siren lights kept flashing on their own, lighting up a road with no one left to save. When the lights finally stopped flashing, the world went still. The siren wound down into a faint hum, then silence. I sat there gripping the steering wheel, staring at the empty gurney. Kelly's face was pale in the flicker of the dashboard lights, eyes wide and glassy like she'd forgotten how to blink. We didn't speak. There was nothing to say that could make sense of what we'd just seen. I stepped out of the cab, needing air, but the cold hit like a slap. The fog hadn't lifted. It was thicker now, moving like smoke over the wet ground. Every sound felt swallowed by it. By the time we reached St. Clair's, it was almost 4 a.m. The emergency bay lights buzzed above us, yellow and harsh. We rolled the stretcher in anyway, empty but strapped down, hands still shaking. The nurse at the desk frowned. "No patient," Kelly tried to explain. Words tumbled out, call logs, vitals vanishing. The nurse checked her screen, then looked back at us. "There's no record of any dispatch to that address tonight. Nothing for your unit after midnight." We checked the onboard system ourselves. The call wasn't there. Neither was the entry for County Road 9. It was as if someone had erased the whole thing, leaving a blank space where those hours should have been. I tried to replay the radio message, but the file showed as corrupted. Every attempt ended in static. Kelly's hands trembled as she set the clipboard down. "She was right here," she whispered. When I went back to lock the ambulance, something caught my eye. A damp footprint on the metal floor. Small, bare, leading toward the rear doors. Outside, the fog had thinned just enough to see the empty road stretching into blackness. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed once, then cut off. And for the first time all night, I wasn't sure if it came from us. I couldn't let it go. The next day, while the others slept off their shifts, I drove back to the station and pulled the incident sheets myself. Nothing. No County Road 9. No Lila. It was like that night had been scrubbed clean. Kelly told me to drop it. "We're both exhausted," she said, but her eyes told me she was still seeing it too. That evening, I checked the police archives. There it was, a crash on County Road 9 from 15 years ago. A family of 3, their car overturned near a broken bridge. 2 confirmed dead, 1 missing. The name jumped out like a heartbeat. Lila Moore, age 15. The report said they never recovered her body. The bridge had collapsed days later, burying the wreck under the river. I stared at the old photo in the file, her face pale and small, framed by dark hair. The same girl who'd whispered my name in the ambulance. When I called dispatch for confirmation, the tech on duty hesitated before speaking. "Sir, that call couldn't have come through," he said. "Our radio servers were offline for maintenance between 2 and 3 a.m. I told him that was impossible. We'd heard a voice, a girl's name, an official confirmation. He went quiet for a long time before saying, "No one was logged in on our end." I drove back to the road that night. The gate we'd seen was gone. Grass covered the track, no tire marks, no fence, no sound except the whisper of wind through the trees. The whole place looked untouched, like it hadn't seen a vehicle in years. I stood there until the fog started to crawl back over the field. Somewhere far off, a single siren rose and faded, and for the first time I wondered if what we'd answered that night wasn't a call for help, but a call to remember. It's been years since that night, but the sound of that siren still finds me. Some nights it slips through the city noise like a ghost frequency, faint, distant, impossible to trace. I'll be parked outside a hospital, paperwork half done, and it cuts through everything. That same tone, that same rhythm. Every time it pulls me back to that fog-covered road. Kelly left the service not long after. She said she couldn't sit in an ambulance without thinking about the empty gurney. I stayed. I told myself someone had to keep answering, even if I never understood what we'd answered that night. The job is built on control, heartbeats, timing, survival. But that night proved control is only an illusion. I still replay her last words in my head. "You're too late." They weren't cruel. They sounded tired, like she'd been waiting too long for anyone to arrive. I think she just wanted someone to see her again, even if only for a few minutes. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that's why she let go. Some nights when the streets are empty and the sky feels too low, I see the reflection of someone sitting in the back seat. A shape more than a person, never moving, never speaking. Just there, the same size, the same quiet presence, and every instinct tells me not to turn around. People ask how you deal with the things you see in this job. I usually say you don't, you just learn to carry them differently. But there's something about that night that refuses to be carried. It lingers instead, waiting in the static between radio calls, in the silence after the siren fades. And every time I hear that echo drift through the fog, I whisper the same thing as if she can still hear me. "I'm sorry we were late.